Kirk Herbstreit set to join us on loan from Allstate, and Herbie joins us now. I was talking about this a little while ago on the show. You know, Michigan not preparing or being prepared to face Army and nearly losing in overtime. Could you imagine if Michigan had lost that game, Herbie?
Oh, my gosh. In a year where Jim Harbaugh's in his fifth year, he's 8-11 against ranked teams coming in. Some of his own fans are saying, this isn't working. When can we beat Ohio State? When can we beat Michigan State? What's going on? Why can't we win these big games? And if they were to lose to Army before they get to a bye week and then they got to go to Madison to take on the Badgers, it's better off we don't think about that. I think we just say they found a way to win and move forward. But they've got a lot of work to do if they want to accomplish what their fan base expects from them in 2019.
What advice, as a former quarterback, would you give Trevor Lawrence this year?
Well, far be it from me to give him any advice, but just being, this kid's a freak. I would tell him, it's just from following this sport and being in the perch that I've been in for 24 years and watching guys come and go, I would probably advise him and say, just be careful of listening, and it's hard not to today, but feeling these almost unrealistic expectations. What happens when I've watched guys feel as if they've told me after the season, they subconsciously feel that they have to live up to that hype. And there's a tendency to want to make the 50-yard touchdown on every play. And so it's not fun to gain 3 yards, 4 yards, 7 yards, and slowly let the game come to you. It's easier to want to hit Justin Ross for a 60-yard touchdown or T. Higgins for a big throw. And I think there's just a tendency to force the issue. And, in this sport, when you start trying to make plays instead of letting those plays come to you, there's a bit of a problem. And I think Clemson has an offense. That's probably the biggest thing that they have to fight against is trying to live up to such big expectations when you have a quarterback like that. But he's as good as they say. I mean, he's the best I've seen. I mean, Andrew Luck was a really good one when you start thinking about who will transition to the NFL. Luck was one coming out of college that you just could not wait to see what he would do. And the one that comes to mind before that would be Peyton Manning. When you just look at him and you think, okay, this guy's going to the NFL. He's going to have a great career. Trevor Lawrence has everything you're looking for, which is his size, his approach to the game, his humility, his willingness to work, his willingness to want to get better. It's going to be scary where he'll be a year from now, and once he gets done with his junior year, and whoever's lucky enough to be sitting there at number one will obviously have a quarterback that they can put the franchise on his back.
What was the biggest surprise this weekend to you?
Besides Army, the two probably that stood out to me was Nebraska with Scott Frost up 17 in Boulder, and Colorado fighting all the way back to beat them was probably one that stands out. And then this is one that you have to be, just a degenerate like me to have stayed up for. They had a delay out in Seattle with Cal and Washington. And by the time I got home, it was almost 3 a.m. And that game delayed so late that it was still on. And Cal ended up knocking off Washington late. And that one, even though you thought it might be competitive, I don't know if anybody thought Cal would go to Seattle and knock off the Huskies. So that one was a late one, but a big surprise.
Yeah, I thought the USC win over Stanford surprised a lot of people, including most people at USC.
Yeah, that's another fan base that is got mixed emotions, Dan, because, of course, they're fighting for the Trojans and hoping the Trojans win, but some of them are openly cheering for Clay Helton to lose because they want quote unquote Urban Meyer or Bob Stoops, and so how fickle fans can be. But yeah, SC, how about that? That's a true freshman, Keaton Slovis, who stepped in there and had a monster game against Stanford, and SC is another team that you're talking about a head coach that's facing a lot of stress and pressure. And think about that opening up their season with Fresno, Stanford, at BYU, Utah, at Washington, at Notre Dame. In a year where if you don't win 10 and potentially win the Pac-12, you're fired. And then you lose your starting quarterback week one. That's a lot of pressure, but they looked good last week.
When's the last time you looked at a sign doing College Game Day and it just made you laugh out loud?
Man, I there are so many of them out there that, you almost get immune to them. So I typically, depending on where we go, try not to look at them and see what they might have. But, yeah, I mean, we actually have a segment where we have the signs. We show different signs that are out there. But I can't think of a one or a category. They had a lot of fun last week with Ed Orgeron, different signs and pictures of him. And, of course, he's become one of the great characters in the sport with his voice and the way he talks. People like to have fun with him. But, by the way, he's got LSU all of a sudden figuring out how to score touchdowns and not just play defense. You want to talk about a team after 2 weeks that's kind of trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
There's a quarterback, Joe Burrow, and an offense. Joe Brady came over from the Saints where he's 29 years old, and he's become like the genius of the sport after 2 weeks. He's implemented the Saints offense at LSU, and this kid, Joe Burrow, is the beneficiary. It looks like running a lot of the same plays that Drew Brees runs, and Texas could not figure out how to stop them. So that's a team that to keep an eye on, and what a matchup that potentially could be with Joe Burrow and this new offense going up against Tua in Tuscaloosa late in the year.
I mentioned at the outset of the interview, you're joining us on behalf of Allstate. The Allstate Mayhem moment predictions, how are you doing with that this year?
Pretty challenging when you look at an entire slate of games and try to figure out where the Mayhem moment might be. And, of course, that could be an upset. That could be a close call like we had last week with Army and Michigan. So Tuesdays I have a prediction. I might start asking Fritzy who he likes. Tuesday.
No, I'll bet against that if you're asking Fritzy for advice.
So, yeah, Tuesday we predict on Twitter where the Mayhem moment might be. And then Saturday night with Fowler and I on ABC, we kind of react to the day and find our Mayhem moment of the day, which is much easier than trying to predict it on Tuesday.
Herbie, great to talk to you. Safe travels as always. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Great catching up with you, Dan. Talk to you soon.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.